listening to our podcast, Noise to Music, where we study relationships, use them as a springboard towards taking the noise in our lives and turning it into music. I'm your host, Chaim Levy. This is episode 7, entitled Confidence to Humility. I encourage you to go back and listen to episode 6 if you want to kind of delve into the depth between confidence and arrogance. We took the confidence side and brought it to the arrogant side. In this class, we're going to be following up with that and discussing taking confidence and going towards humility. How do those two fit in? We're going to start with a simple translation. What does confidence mean? What does arrogance mean? All right. Confidence is the willingness, essentially, to experience negative emotions like fear, uncertainty, embarrassment, and do the thing anyway. Meaning a confident person is going to feel fear, is going to feel emotions like fear, he's going to feel uncertainty. I'm not sure, is this going to work out, is it not? He might even see that he's going to be embarrassed. They're going to do something and it's not going to fit well with others. But they're going to do it anyway because they feel it's the right thing to do. And they're confident about making the right decision. Arrogance, on the other hand, is coming from a completely different angle. When somebody's making an arrogant decision, right, it's coming from insecurity, as we mentioned in the past. Arrogance is about thinking you're the only one that matters. Kind of like, winner takes all mentalities. Has nothing to do with the others. It's just coming from a person's elevated source. Now, I'm going to give an example from a Torah perspective, right? From a Torah perspective, how do we actually build our confidence? What is confidence built on? What are the points that one would need in order to be a confident person? So we'll go back to the Navi, to David HaMelech's times, to King David's times, and he states the following. It's actually in Shmuel Aleph, chapter 17, verse 33. There it discusses a very interesting time in Jewish history. The Jewish people were being led by Shaul HaMelech, King Saul, which within itself is a whole topic and a whole class about humility and what he did wrong. He kind of had humility in a bad way. Maybe we'll bring it up a little bit later. But King Shaul HaMelech, the Jewish people were being opposed by the Philistine at that time. And there was a man that we all heard about. His name was Goliath. He was standing there, a very big, husky, strong, powerful man, and he was just embarrassing the Jewish people, and just, cursing against God, God forbid, and just, they were looking for someone to lead them into battle against this person, and they couldn't. Everyone was terrified. David HaMelech, King David, was a youngster at that time. He was youth. He was a young boy. He was 13 years old. He comes over to Shaul, to King Saul, and he says, I'm going to go to this person, to Goliath, and I'm going to fight with him, and I'm going to win. So King Shaul says, what are you talking about? You're a little kid, he says. And David HaMelech says a very interesting answer, and from this answer we understand what confidence is built on. He says, your servant was a shepherd for his father, and when a lion or bear came and carried off the sheep from the flock, I went out after it and struck it and saved the sheep from its mouth. If it attacked me, I held on to its mane. I totally battled against this lion and against this bear, and I protected my dad's sheep. So Shaul HaMelech, King Saul, says, okay, this is really nice and cute, but we're talking about Goliath here. We're talking about an entire army that's way more powerful than us. And David HaMelech continued and said, God who saved me from the lion and the bear is going to save me from the Philistine. So the question is asked, why didn't King David say from the outset, right, I'm confident God's going to save me. Just kind of rely on his trust in God. Rely on his bitachon. Rely on his, on just, God being there. So the commentaries explain that confidence is built on looking at your past experiences. Someone had an experience in the past and they were capable. You have to garner from there and know that there's some type of opening in order to proceed, let's call it. But the point is, confidence is built on your past experiences. David HaMelech said, I'm confident I can go against this guy because of things I've done in the past. I have it within me, and God's going to help me go to the complete next level. All right? If someone, for example, is standing, off a cliff and saying, I'm confident God's going to save me and wants to jump, that's not called confidence. That's arrogance. Confidence means you have a precedent. You have things that are within you that will lead you to say, my success will be there. And then you build on that towards the future. And God steps in, obviously, when you do your hishtadlut, you do your effort, and makes everything work. In business, it's the same thing. You might be the only one thinking about this business idea. You might be the only one that understands it. You might be the only one that has a hunch that it's going to work out. And you know that you have the capabilities of persevering to make it work. That's called confidence. I'm looking at my past. I'm a hard worker. I'm dedicated. I'm a problem solver. I've done it in the past. I'm confident. And God will give me the blessing to succeed. That is how the Navi teaches us about building confidence within ourselves. It's so important, it's so key that a person pays attention and delves into their past accomplishments. That they look into their past and say, hey, what have I done in the past that was good? Where have I been with this? Where can I go with it now? And moving forward, I have what it takes because I look at what I did in this situation. I look at what I did in this situation. I look at what I did in this situation, and I was successful, or at least I tried hard. I'm confident I can weather the storm. I'm confident I can build. I'm confident that I have a direction here. The success is ultimately based on God, as is in everything else. That's how the Torah teaches us we build true confidence. And what happened with David HaMelech, with King David? He beat Goliath, right? The famous story with the slingshot and so on. What about a question that we've always been grappling with, which is, kind of how much do I show myself and kind of talk about myself? Is that confidence or is that arrogance? How does that kind of fit into play? Is it necessary for me to talk about myself and give examples, or is this arrogance? So the truth is, whenever someone is in a situation that they're using themselves as an example, because it's the best example that they know, it's themselves, and they bring their success, they bring what they've accomplished into the mix to help others, especially, that's not arrogance, that's confidence. We've had a class, last episode we discussed the whole point of arrogance and how that fits into play. Now someone could see, are they dating someone that's an arrogant person? But when someone kind of reaches into their bucket and gives that as an example, because that's the best one that they know and fits perfectly and could inspire people, that's confidence. That's not arrogance. You're using it for a productive matter. You're using it to help. You're using it to build. Rav Dessler mentions in volume 5, that spiritual matters are very similar. There is an idea of confidence in spiritual matters as well. Why? Because effectively there's a catch-22. On the one hand, we're supposed to strive to build, to accomplish. On the other hand, the person's supposed to be happy with what they have, right? So if you're always striving, if you're always searching, if you're always looking, if you're always researching and working on yourself, when are you ever happy? When are you ever happy? How do you, when does that ever happen? The answer is, a person's supposed to kind of be at both at once. On the one hand, you're supposed to be happy, and a person is supposed to feel achieved, and a person is supposed to be content with their character and their spirituality and so on and so forth. But they're always supposed to strive for more, never to be complacent. It's complacency that we don't want to fall into, but not the place of unhappiness and unsatisfied and say, we're nothing. That's false humility. Right? Shaul HaMelech, as we mentioned in before, King Saul, what happened with him was he was given the capability and entrusted with the responsibility of being the first king of the Jewish people. He lost it. Why? Because he had humility in the wrong place. When it was time for him to step in a position of leadership, he fell into pressure. He didn't understand that this is not the right way to go about it. A person has to know their place. We have to know what's not our place, and we also have to know what is our place. Rav Nachman Breslov says a very powerful statement. And if you just get this out of this episode, as we say on Passover, Dayenu. Rav Nachman Breslov says it's very dangerous if one does not know their weakness, but it's even more dangerous if one doesn't know their strengths. You're not being a humble person if you're not acknowledging and knowing your strengths. It's important to know it's important to know your weaknesses. It's important to know what you're not good at. And it's even important to focus on mistakes we've made in the past in order to grow. But it's even more important, it's on a higher level and a bigger level of precedence to focus on our strengths and our accomplishments, because chances are our place of where we're supposed to be going with building ourselves and our place of beracha and so on is going to be nurtured from our success. So if you don't acknowledge it, that's false humility. God doesn't want that. He gave you blessing. He gave you you. He gave you someone very special, which is called you. You need to know who that great you is. You cannot build unless we have that down pat. And that's where kind of the Shaul HaMelech fell into place. And he actually lost his kingship because of that. And it was transferred to, as we know, King David HaMelech. Now, with all this said and done, the process is as follows. A person has to reach into their past, to reach and look at their accomplishments, to look at their strengths. That builds confidence. That's how we know we can accomplish. Once we know that, we want to work on humility. You don't want to get arrogant. You want to work on humility. How do you build true humility? So we'll learn once again from the Torah, from the Bible, that what? The Torah testifies that the most humble person ever in history was Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses. How could he have been the most humble person? How could he have been the most humble person? Did he not see that he went up to the heavens and brought down the Torah and there was no one else there? Did he not see that he split the sea? Did he not see that he used his staff to bring down and rain down punishment on the Egyptians? I mean, this was a special person. How was he so humble? He should have been the most arrogant person. Why? Because as we've mentioned, and it falls into line so well with what we're saying, humility is about acknowledging your accomplishments. It's about acknowledging your greatness. It's about acknowledging the great you that you are. However, humility comes from the fact that we know it all comes from God. So you're effectively doing both. You know you're great, but it's a blessing from God. It's tools and character and direction that God has given me. What room do I have to be arrogant? Does a bird get arrogant because it could soar up in the sky? Does a fish get arrogant because it could swim deep? Or a horse get arrogant because he could run fast? Absolutely not. Those are blessings. Those are tools given by God. But it has to acknowledge what it could do. It has to acknowledge the great you that you are. So confidence leads to humility, which then leads to bitachon, which then leads to trust in God. You know that you can do it. You know there's something you can garner. From that, you understand humility. You know it comes from the Almighty. You know, and then you can take that step and say, God is going to give me this blessing. I'm going to trust that He's going to make the outcome the best. That's the process. Confidence to humility to trust in God. Now, once again, confidence is the only way to truly be humble, right? Because once you're confident in yourself, you know that you can accomplish. You also know that God is in your life. What are some of the advantages of humility? First of all, it fosters others to trust you. People trust someone that's humble. When you're humble, people like it. People trust you. They want to be around you. In addition, a person will be less defensive if they have true humility and confidence. Why is that? Because when we're humble, we understand that we're not perfect and the world is not perfect. So I won't be so defensive. So you pointed out that I did something wrong. Okay, guess what? You're not really surprising me because I never expected to be perfect. So true, stable confidence and humility allows me to be less defensive. In addition, there was a study done by Krauss in 2015 that humility fosters self-forgiveness, and it's built on what we just mentioned. Why does humility foster self-forgiveness? You know why? Because I was never perfect to begin with. So I messed up. Okay, well, there's nothing new about that. That happens every so often. It's something called human. Don't know if you ever heard about it, but humans make mistakes. So it's okay. Let's move on. Let's build from it. Let's learn from it. Let's take it to the positive. Let's not let it drown us to the negative. We have a bigger and stronger capability of being self-forgiving if we have this system in play. We're confident and we're truly humble. In addition, as we mentioned, you're less self-condemning. You have more self-compassion. The last point I want to bring up, and the benefit that we have from true humility, is that we pick up from our mistakes and failures much faster. We don't let it destroy us. We don't let it break us because we take a bigger view on life. We take a bigger view on the world. And a person has to have that in order to be able to succeed. You need to be able to pick up from your mistakes, to pick up from your failure and keep going and build from it. Not let it slow you down, not let it destroy you. How is that? Because you have confidence. In addition, you have true humility where you know the world is not perfect and I'm not perfect and it's okay. It's part of the program. Now it's time to move on. How do I develop humility? How do I get it? Just by listening to this podcast over and over? I don't know about that. But you know what are 2 steps that we can do? Number 1 is developing a very accurate assessment of my strengths and my weaknesses. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? That'll allow me to be humble because I know exactly where I stand. The second part is developing the capability to see God in our everyday. When we see God, when we see the blessings that He gives us step after step, and everyone has blessings that they can dig deep into, that allows us to see, that allows us to enter God into our life. So I see my strengths, but I also know that God is there. Once again, this is a slow build-up starting from episode 1 all the way to this episode, episode 7, step after step. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I look forward to getting together, at least on a virtual way. Thank you so much. This is Chaim Levy and our podcast, Noise to Music.